Welcome back to Better Than Before. This is Tony Richards. You know, everything's a transaction. It's impossible for us to buy from ourselves. It's impossible for us to sell to ourselves. It's impossible for us to trade with ourselves. It's impossible to have an exchange with ourselves. We need other people. And all of life is a series of multiple transactions between people. And sometimes those transactions don't go well, or you don't close them the way that you had anticipated, especially in sales, when you're going out and you're offering a product or service to someone in exchange for monetary compensation or whatever the exchange is. And if it doesn't go well, there are probably some reasons why it didn't close. So I have a couple of those that I want to share with you today. And the first one I can think of is relationship. Quite frankly, the relationship wasn't strong enough, or maybe you failed to connect with the other person. Might have even been a personality conflict. You know, in a lot of situations and a lot of deals that don't get made, it comes down to, I don't really like that guy, or I don't really like that girl. And sometimes when deals do close and deals do get made, it comes down to, I really like that guy, or I really like that girl. And so sometimes it's just the relationship connection, how you managed it, how you facilitated, how you built it, will determine a lot of whether or not you get the deal done or not. Number two is resistance. You may not have been effective enough at managing their level of resistance. It could have been the wrong time. It could have been the wrong place. It could have been the wrong budget. It could have been a lot of different reasons that they're resisting saying yes to you. And your job is to uncover those areas of resistance and overcome them. Once I was offered a job in Indiana. This is a long time ago, folks. I mean, this is back in the 80s. And I was proposed to come and visit a market in Indiana, and I was being courted by an executive there to come and be a part of their company. And he slid an envelope across the table, and he said, "Here's what we're going to pay you now." And then I opened the envelope and I looked at it. And then he slid an envelope across the table. He said, "And here's what we're going to pay you in 6 months." And I opened up the envelope and I looked at him and I said, "I'll be back in 6 months." So, I mean, my resistance was the second envelope is where I thought we should have started. Right. And so unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, we never consummated that deal. And I never moved to Indiana and I never went to work for that company. But in terms of what kind of resistance the other person is going to have, or that you may need to overcome, you have to first ask enough good questions to understand and identify where that resistance might be. Number three is value. And if the other person doesn't receive value from time spent with you, and if you haven't demonstrated any value up front, they're going to perceive that is how doing business with you is going to be. So if you don't come out of the gate with something strong and providing, that value, they're going to be, oh, this is what it's like to work with this person. So you need to have some strategies of how you can get value into your discussions right away. Because again, the prospect or the other person is going to be thinking, wow, this is what it's like to work with this person, right? So you're trying to establish that value right from the get-go. The next one is content. And this could be that if you didn't close the deal, it could be they just didn't like what you said. They didn't like what you had to present. They didn't like what you suggested, or maybe they didn't like the direction you were suggesting that they proceed in, or what they had to do, or what hoops they'd have to jump through. It just wasn't what they wanted to hear, right? And so the good news for you is if you can figure out that if content was the problem, you can change that, right? You can go back to them at another time with completely different content. But if you're convinced that it wasn't the content, that it was some other kind of reason, and you're not willing to change how you presented it or what you presented, likely that your results are probably not going to change. Listening. Listening is a big one. Number 5, if they didn't believe that you were listening and they didn't think that you really understood them or understood their wants or needs or desires, that's a problem. Because again, I keep hitting this nail with my hammer. It's like what it's like to work with you, right? So if they didn't feel like you listened to them in the first meeting or two, this is what it's like to work with this person. They're not going to really listen to me. So you need to make sure that you listen and you understand exactly what it is that they're looking for. Now, in the consulting business and coaching business, that gets a little more difficult because what the client thinks they need and what they actually need are hardly ever the same thing. It's usually very different, because they want sometimes to tell you exactly how to solve their problem, but yet they're not solving their problem, right? So if they knew how to solve the problem, why didn't they solve it? So sometimes you just have to read between the lines and figure out what this situation needs, because very seldom are people going to tell you exactly what that is, because they don't know. They don't know. Another one is aggression. Sometimes you can just come on too strong, and you can be too confrontational or slightly obstinate or slightly obnoxious. And so if they're more analytical and they're more introverted and they're more laid back, and you're running at 95 to 100 miles an hour and you're talking really fast and being really pushy, sometimes they're like, gee, is this what it's like to work with this person? And I don't think we're a good fit, right? So that could be a reason that you didn't close the deal. This is kind of a touchy one, but I'm going to tell you that it's absolutely true. I've had it happen several times in our practice here at Clear Vision Development Group. If you're smarter than the client, if you come off being too intellectual and you've got too many theories and you've got too many equations and rectangles and triangles and squares and scientific this and that, all of which are important and all of which we use here. But with certain clients, they don't like to be upstaged. And they don't like to think that they might be dealing with somebody. I mean, after all, they're the president of their organization. They're the director of their group or whatever, and everybody thinks they're the bomb, right? And then here you come with all your stuff, and they're like, oh, I feel a little inferior around this person. I don't like that. So you got to be careful. It's your job, especially in this business, not in all situations where you're trying to close a deal, but in this business, you got to be careful about it, because you do have to be smarter than the average bear, because that is how you solve difficult problems and create situations for people that are good, because you are at the top of your game and you are the best in your field. It's just that sometimes when other people are insecure and you're very secure, that could be an issue. Another one is, and this will be the last one for the segment, but another one is expectations. If their expectations didn't match what you brought to the table, your capabilities, your presentation, your offering, your meeting, what you presented, if it just didn't meet what they were expecting. And this is why it's so important. If you're at the stage that where you're about to close the deal, you should have controlled and helped set those expectations all along in the process. Because if you get to the end and you have expectation conflict, they're expecting one thing and you presented something different and you didn't get the deal because that was conflicted, you didn't control, set, and clarify the expectations as the process went along. So those are some reasons why you may have lost that last deal. And so you might want to think about making some changes or modifications. Remember, you're perfectly aligned to get the results you're getting today. And if you want different results tomorrow, you need to change the alignment, right? So you need to change some of the things you're doing today to get better results tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to Better Than Before with Tony Richards, a business leaders podcast powered by Clear Vision Development Group. For more resources from Tony, visit clearvisiondevelopment.com. Join us next time for another episode of Better Than Before with Tony Richards.